So you've created your first ant, and that's fantastic. The thing is, if I hit the run button at the moment, or the act button, nothing happens, is the ant just sits there. Let's give it some movement. Now, the way we don't program the individual ant, we program all the ants we're ever going to build, and we do that in the class. There's two ways you can do this. You can either left double-click very quickly, or you can right-click and go Open Editor. And you'll see this editor appears. Sometimes you may see it just flashes at the bottom there. So if nothing happens, look at the bottom and look for your Greenfoot to already be open. Now, let's describe quickly what we have here. This is Java. This is what Java looks like. I actually think it's much easier to understand than Python. If you take a look, in Python, you naturally have to indent every time. I'm sure you're used to that. In Java, although it's good to indent, you don't need to. Is what we have here, these curly brackets. Now, if I zoom in, we can see these curly brackets. That's the one that starts, and that's the one that stops. That's the one that starts, and that's the one that stops. So these curly brackets are really important, is because we have these, although it's nice to indent, we don't have to. We just have to remember to start and stop our curly brackets. So let's look at some of this code quickly. Just like Python, we can import. And what we're importing here is a library called Greenfoot. And now the star, that's a wildcard. There'll be one of the building blocks of homeworks will be about wildcards. And inside of this Greenfoot are a set of smaller libraries. We've got one called World, one called Actor, one called Greenfoot Image, one called Greenfoot with a capital G. There is a difference. And one called Mouse Info. So these are libraries all created to help you use Greenfoot. And we're going to refer to those later. Okay. But first, we're going to use some standard Java, and that standard Java, we're going to use the word move. So I type move. I now use curved brackets, that's Shift and 9. And let's have a 5. I close the curved bracket, and I use a semicolon. Always going to be a semicolon unless I say otherwise. Now, at the moment it hasn't saved, it hasn't done anything. I now need to click compile. I have a file saved, no syntax errors, and that's grayed out. Now, that means that the thing has saved itself, there's no errors. Notice where I've placed it. I've placed it just a line under add your action code here, and we'll explain that later. But for now, I want you to see how this works. I'm going to click back on my ant. I'm going to add a new ant, right-click, new ant, place it. If I hit the Act button, it moves by 5 pixels. And if we look at that, so this is public void Act. So I'm not going to come to the public and the void much later. The important thing is this is a subroutine called Act. And when I press that button, Act here, it will what we call a subroutine, i.e. it will run that subroutine. And it will run it in every class it can. Wherever it sees this little subroutine called Act, it will run it. So I press Act and it moves 5 pixels. The other button on here is Run. And what that will do is that will continuously call the Act. So every few seconds it will just press that, and that is the speed of that is controlled by speed. So if I now hit run, it's basically going to hit Act a lot. Watch. Now notice that the ant stopped on the edge of the game world. That's one of those things that was being programmed for us and is in the Actor main class. I didn't have to program that. I don't care how it's programmed, I just knew it would, and that's really great. And when I created a subclass of this actor called Ant, it inherited the behavior to stop on the edge of the world. So that's why we did it. So what I'd like you to do now is with your Ant, open the editor, down, make a new line after add your action code here, and type in move and in curved brackets 5 and semicolon. Got that? Away you go.